welcome to my channel. I'm Jasmine, the Six Figure Formulator, and today we're going to talk about elderberry syrup. So let me tell you a little bit how I got into it at first. I've been on my holistic and naturopathic type of medicine journey for a little while now, and a few years ago my family and I got really sick. And I had been hearing all of this about elderberry, but I didn't really know how to make it myself yet, so I ordered it from somebody who I know makes it. And I was a bit skeptical when I first got it. It's really more liquidy, like a tea. When I hear terms like syrup, I take those very seriously, so very literally I should say. And so I was thinking it was going to be like one of those medicinal syrups that you pick up in a store. So anyway, we took it and we had a nasty sort of cold back then, and this elderberry syrup just cleared it right up. And it takes more than one time to convince me. I was like, okay, well, maybe let's see how it goes. And over the few years, the next few times that we got sick, every time I took elderberry syrup, miraculously, we felt immediately better, sometimes even as soon as taking it the first time. So I figured out how to make my own, because that's what I do. I love to just create things, and I really wanted to make it with my own spin. And so I did a lot of research. I tried a few formulas, and I finally got one that was really good, really rich, concentrated, tasted great. And I actually sold it, and it was one of my best-selling recipes. I got a lot of great feedback from it from a lot of families. I made a version for kids that was vegan. A lot of people really love this syrup. One thing that's really important with elderberry that I learned throughout the years was that you want to make sure that when you are cooking elderberry, you do not do it over time in a crock pot. You want to do it over low flame. And I have my big old trusty stainless steel elderberry pot that I use just for elderberry syrup, because what happens over time is there's a like a coating that's on our crock pots, and it can actually be toxic, and from what it is, it's supposed to be cancerous, and that can leak into your elderberry syrup, really with any food that you use over time and as you're wearing down the enamel. So I suggest over time cooking it over very low heat, or like I said, to kind of jump start it, you cook it with that good burst of heat, and then you use like a stainless steel and you cook it over the stove and let it brew for a while. I also mentioned a nut milk bag, and this is what it looks like. You can use a fine metal like mesh strainer, or you could use cheesecloth, but this nut milk bag is really big. I get them from Amazon, they're pretty cheap. I like the material. It doesn't easily break when you squeeze it and you want to get everything out of it, and it doesn't let any sort of crumbs or anything go through. This is a really, really fine strainer. This is probably the best one that I've used. And when I have my nut milk bags, I have one designated specifically just for elderberry as well. When I'm making elderberry, there are certain things that I use only for the elderberry to cook it, and I advise doing that the best way, so that way it's not getting contaminated by any other food. And also, in your cooking, elderberry is pretty powerful, so you don't want to have any of that leaking into any of the elderberry flavor leaking into your other food. So let's go ahead and get started. This is what I put into my elderberry syrup. Each ingredient is specifically chosen for its values, and some more so because of the vitamin C value they have, and others for their anti-inflammatory values, and then last but not least, of course, their vitamin C value. So I have lemons here, and I put them in there just like that so that they can have they have the peel, because there's some healing qualities that comes out of the peel whenever you cook it directly and you steep it for a while. Lemons are really high in vitamin C as well, and they can kind of help to tackle a sore throat. Sometimes it can be this acidity can be a little bit of an irritant. It usually just depends on the person, but generally when it's cooked in with the rest of the ingredients, it's mild, so it doesn't really have any of those irritating effects. Next, I have my fresh chopped ginger. And the ginger is really high in vitamin C. It's also anti-inflammatory, just like the turmeric here, the cinnamon, the garlic. The garlic, it may sound gross, but I promise you can't taste it with any of the other ingredients. It really has a lot of vitamin C that even if you chop them up, whole cloves by themselves, and you take them about a spoonful, it actually helps to clear up a cold in a lot of ways as well. I have some freeze-dried strawberries that I use, also with blueberries, and those are cranberries. And those are all, again, really good sources of vitamin C, and they help to make this very flavorful. Because one thing about a good elderberry syrup is that it can be very tart, and it can be very herby, even more so, I should say. And so this helps to give it a good, sweet, natural flavoring, but it doesn't have any excess sugar. All of these berries are dried, and they do not have any additional sugar. Next, we have our rose hips over here in this corner. Those are very high in vitamin C. They also tend to have a very good flavor. I have my cloves over there. The cloves are really good for helping to take away a sore throat. They work almost instantly, and it seems that they even open up the airways and help you breathe a little bit better. And last but not least, you can sub this out for maple, but I like to use raw local honey that I get from a local honey farmer in the area. And you want to use honey that's local to you. That's the best way to do it, because it has what's in the air locally, basically, to break it down into the simplest terms, to help you adapt to any sort of pollen or anything that's changing in the air around here. Now, if you are doing it with vegan, you're going to want to use maple syrup, and I suggest going with the high grade A maple syrup, and that'll just give it enough sweetness to taste really good and to be palatable for the average person. But all of these mixed together, I usually do it with some spring water. This is my favorite brand of spring water right here. This is a really good brand of spring water. You want to boil it for a good, I want to say, it depends on how. I usually do it on low, and I do it for about, I want to say, like a good 8 hours. I'll boil it a little on medium, I want to say, until I smell everything cooking really well. I turn it off, I cover it, and then I just let it simmer for the rest of the day. And I come back and strain with the cheese, with a nut milk bag, and put it into the jars. And I'll kind of go through with you and show you the end process, because that's a little bit, the steps are a little bit different here. But these are basically the ingredients that go into our elderberry. how I make my elderberry syrup. I put it in these bottles. I used to ship in these. They're cute little bears. This is about 7-8 ounces, and you can use droppers to basically take it in. I recommend like about 3 milliliters for kids at one time. Usually you can take it preventatively. It helps to keep away colds and stuff like that. I would do that maybe once or twice a week, and like once a day. And whenever you're sick, you really want to up on this stuff, and you want to take 3 times a day, or whenever you're feeling at your worst, and you want to do 3 dropperfuls for yourself, and then 1 for kids depending on their age. Honey isn't safe for babies, so you want to be wary of that. Any sort of herbs or allergies that you have, you want to make sure that you're conscious of that, so that you're not adding anything that would react adversely to you. This is a really good home remedy. It's not meant to cure any diseases or anything like that. I have to give that disclaimer, but it has really helped my family a lot in terms of taking a natural medicine that is really, really good and works really well for the cold and the flu. I don't know if you guys noticed, when I first recorded this video, I wasn't feeling too well. I was a little bit under the weather, and I actually took a dose of this last night once it was done heating, and then I let it stew for a little while longer. You can see the rest in the back. I'm gonna store that in another glass jar. But once you, after I took it, now this morning, I don't have any more runny nose. I'm not sniffly, congested, my throat doesn't hurt. And so it's really good and really effective. And as you can see, my formula is a lot more thick and syrupy, as opposed to, say, not to down anybody, but just from the first one that I took, this one's a lot more thick and syrupy, and it's a lot more concentrated. You could water it down if you're going to sell this or going to mass produce this. You could water it down, and it can still be pretty helpful, but I like for mine to be nice and concentrated, and that's what I recommend as well. So I hope you guys find this helpful. The formula is posted online for you guys to buy, and you guys to make this exact recipe, or you can just look at my ingredients, follow some basic steps, and pretty much figure it out on your own. But I hope this was helpful, and I highly recommend this for you guys, especially with littles, and if you're just looking into more holistic type of approach in general. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.